For more on this right now, let's go out right now to Fox News' Jennifer Griffin joining us here with the very latest. Jennifer.
Well, Mike, I think the first thing to point out is that there are not enough U.S. Marines or special operators who've been moved into the region for any sort of extended ground invasion. There may be a possibility of raids. There's been talk from the president about possibly sending special operations units, perhaps with the help of the 82nd Airborne, in to try and snatch and grab, if you will, the 900 pounds plus of highly enriched uranium. But that highly enriched uranium, we believe, is buried in tunnels at the Isfahan complex, and it would be a complicated ground operation that would put U.S. forces on the ground, not for a few hours, but for up to a week, if not longer. And that is very dangerous given all the talk of this operation and the possibility that the Iranians would likely mine that area or ambush that area. Then there's the talk of taking the islands, Karg Island, which is about 500 miles north of the Strait of Hormuz, or Larak Island, which is closer to the Strait of Hormuz. We know that the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, with about 3,500 sailors and Marines on board, arrived in the region into the Arabian Sea over the weekend. They are in a position, but they have not crossed through the Strait of Hormuz, and there's no evidence that they are going to be able to anytime soon. So they are not really in a position to take those islands in the coming days. It seems what is happening is a pressure campaign to back up this kind of talk of if negotiations that are nascent in Pakistan, from what we understand from the White House, with possible Iranian leaders, they haven't said which ones, if those negotiations go forward or if they fail down the road, that the president would have military options. But again, looking at the numbers and talking to military planners and experts, there still are not enough U.S. troops in place in the Middle East for these kind of specialized operations that are getting bandied about. Mike.
The Middle East critical update. Good day. Today, we are examining the rapidly shifting landscape of the Middle East, focusing on the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran, the strategic positioning of the United States, and the critical economic implications for global trade. The region is currently at its most volatile point in decades, and the questions of leadership, military dominance, and maritime security have never been more pressing. To begin, we must address the persistent rumors surrounding the Iranian leadership, specifically the status of Mujtaba Khamenei and the influential son of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. For weeks, various reports and social media speculations have suggested that Mujtaba have been targeted or is deceased. As of this recording, there is no verified intelligence or official confirmation that Tehran that Mujtaba Khamenei is dead. In fact, most credible intelligence analysis suggests that he remains a central figure in the secession plans for the Islamic Republic. The rumors of his death often surface during periods of high kinetic activity between Israel and Iran as a form of psychological warfare. While the Israeli Mossad has proven its ability to strike deep within Iranian territory, Mujtaba remains under the highest level of protection. His status is vital because he represents the continuity of the hardline clerical establishment. This leads us to the broader question, who is winning? In a conflict of this complexity, winning is subjective and depends entirely on the strategic objectives of the players involved. From a tactical and technological standpoint, Israel has demonstrated significant dominance. Through a series of precise operations, Israel has decapitated the leadership of Iran's primary proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. The degradation of Hezbollah's missile infrastructure and the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah represented a massive strategic blow to Iran's Ring of Fire strategy. Israel has shown that its intelligence penetration of the Iranian apparatus is profound, and its air defense systems, supported by the U.S., have largely neutralized Iran's direct missile barrages. However, from an Iranian perspective, the win is measured in endurance and regional destabilization. Iran has successfully forced Israel into a multi-front war of attrition that is straining the Israeli economy and social fabric. Tehran's goal is not necessarily to win a conventional battle, which they know they cannot, but to remain the primary challenger to Western influence in the region, keeping Israel bogged down in asymmetrical urban warfare. The United States, meanwhile, finds itself in a difficult balancing act. The U.S. objective is containment. Washington is winning if the conflict does not spiral into a full-scale regional war. That requires thousands of American boots on the ground. But deploying a carrier strike groups and THAAD missile defense batteries, the U.S. has successfully deterred the total Iranian collapse in madness. But it has not yet been able to force a diplomatic resolution. As the fighting intensifies, the question of who might enter the war next is paramount. Currently, all eyes are on the axis of resistance and the surrounding Arab nations. We are watching the Houthis in Yemen very closely. While they are already involved, there is a high probability of increased intensity in their drone and missile strikes. Furthermore, Shia militias in Iraq and Syria are under increasing pressure from Tehran to open a more active front against U.S. bases in the Israeli northern border. Perhaps most critically, we must look at the silent neighbors. Jordan and Egypt are now in a precarious position. While they do not wish to enter a war against Israel, and in fact have cooperated on regional security, the internal domestic pressure from their population is immense. If the humanitarian situation in Gaza or potential escalation in the West Bank crosses a certain threshold, these nations may be forced to pivot their diplomatic or military postures. Though full-scale entry remains unlikely, on the other side of the ledger, there is the question of direct U.S. involvement. While the U.S. provides intelligence and defense support, the red line for direct offensive action against Iran would likely be a significant American casualty event or move by Iran to rapidly break out toward a nuclear weapon. This brings us to the final and perhaps most important question for the global economy. Will the straits remain open? We are talking, of course, about the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most important oil choke point. Roughly 1/5 of the world's liquid petroleum passes through this narrow waterway. Iran has frequently threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz if they are pushed to the brink. However, closing the strait is often described as a nuclear option of conventional trade. If Iran were to block the strait, they would not only invite massive direct military response from a global coalition led by the United States, but They would also alienate their primary economic partner, China. China relies heavily on the flow of energy through that corridor. As of now, the strait remains open, but the invisible cost of war is rising. Insurance premiums for shipping have skyrocketed, and many vessels are diverting around the Cape of Good Hope to avoid the Houthi-controlled waters of the Red Sea. The consensus among maritime experts is that the straits will stay open because no one, not even Iran, can afford the total economic isolation that will follow a permanent closure. However, we should expect continued gray zone tactics, sea mines, drone harassment, and ship seizures. These are designed to create friction without triggering a World War level response. In summary, Moshe Khamenei is likely alive. Though the Iranian regime is under immense pressure, Israel holds a tactical advantage. While Iran is playing a long-term game of attrition, the United States is focused on containment. And while the risk of new actors entering the fray is high, the global energy arteries, the straits, will likely remain operational, albeit under high security tension. The situation remains fluid. We will continue to monitor these developments as they unfold. Thank you for your time. Now, this little summary is missing a few key points. And the key point is the Strait of Hormuz is technically closed to Israel and the U.S. Everybody else may pass through if they paid a toll of $2 million. And the money has to be paid in Chinese yuan. So that's one part that needs to be corrected, and I'm doing that as we speak. Now, just to remember, this war basically, from what it looks like, is just the beginning, because it doesn't seem like any of the sides are willing to give any leeway. The U.S. got a 15-point peace plan, while Iran came back with a 5-point plan that wants reparations, U.S. to exit the Middle East, their ballistic missiles off the table.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has made a major statement on the Strait of Hormuz. He says Iran has allowed passage for friendly nations, including China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan. Earlier, Iran clarified the strait remains open for all non-hostile countries, but restricted for the US and Israel. The move comes amid rising tensions in the Middle East, with global oil routes under pressure.